What is up, everybody? This is Marshall Lee of DonkeyJawProjects.com, and this is the Early Bird Artcast. We've had some technical difficulties trying to do one on Saturday, and then even yesterday there was some difficulties, but we are here. It's Wednesday in America, and it's early in the morning as we usually do. And today I have Teresa once again. How you doing, Teresa?
Hello, I'm doing all right, and you?
Pretty good. And where can people find you, Teresa?
They can find me here on YouTube, Teresa del Pilar, the same name that's down here, or on Instagram, same name but with underscores in between the words.
Awesome. And both of those links are in the description. So we have a hard cutoff time here. So we're actually starting a little bit earlier, and hopefully we'll be able to get into this topic pretty well. So basically, the thing that we wanted to talk about, Teresa brought it up, and I think it's related to the fact that this whole thing that everybody's going through right now, the virus and everything, and we all are finding ourselves in a different situation, a different routine, a different, you know even if you still have work, like I do, there's things you have, precautions and things you have to watch out for and take care of, especially if you give a crap, because there are some people out there who don't seem to give a crap. And they're just making it worse for other people. So don't do that. But other than that, Teresa was talking about the idea of getting kind of creating new habits when you're kind of out of your comfort zone. And a lot of us find ourselves out of our comfort zone. And sometimes routine habit can be a great way to kind of figure out how to get back into some kind of zone of either comfort or at least productivity. Is that basically what you were kind of thinking about when you asked me?
Yeah, sort of. It's basically my routine has been really changed by this whole situation because I'm a teacher, so obviously I
Mhm.
cannot go and teach anymore. And so we're having online lessons. I lost a lot of my students, and the whole situation there's been a lot of flux and in uncertainty. And I hear so many times this whole idea of, oh, you have to get out of your comfort zone, and it seems like I don't know. I always listen to that and I say, like, yeah, sure, you have to learn new things, you have to do new things. However, I think that there's this whole intermediate part that is always missing. That is, you can't just leap out of your comfort zone and be productive there. And for me, I don't know. I just I don't do it very well. For me, it's like I have to build a bridge with little habits from my comfort zone to the next comfort zone. But it's always expanding it rather than jumping out of it. And I don't know, I wanted to talk about that idea of how habits create the comfort zone and how you need to move slowly rather than just leap. Because my experience, especially, like, it's been a big reminder these weeks that being thrust out of your comfort zone in a violent way and an unexpected way doesn't lead to being more productive or better in any way. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate. It kind of reminds me of the idea of how people talk about like they're really good under pressure and stuff. And I've always felt, well, like I've thought about that. I'm like, I wanted to say that about myself. And then pressure situations
Yeah.
come at times, and I'm like, not good at all. I'm floundering all over the place. I need somebody to say, give me a life preserver or something to get out of whatever it is. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not so great under pressure. When I'm outside of my comfort zone, I agree. Like, I think it is important to get yourself out. Oh, coffee's ready. Um, I, I do believe that it is important to kind of knock yourself, or to be able to get out of your comfort zone and adapt and things like that. But you can't really kind of live in the uncomfortable place. You know, you're always kind of trying to seek a new kind of equilibrium, I guess, even though I don't necessarily believe in balance, but at the same time, there is a certain sense of equilibrium. And, you know, when things are hectic, crazy, you know, a lot of times the first thing that goes is our creative projects. And then we lose sight of it and then we stop working on it. And then, you know, next thing you know, it's 2, 3 months later and you haven't worked on it, you know, not because you haven't been able to, you know, reach a place of stasis. You've gotten to a point where you almost forgot about it maybe, or you just didn't get back into the habits. And I think that's what you were saying, like habits can kind of be a bridge to a comfort zone. I titled this the new finding like a new normal with habits or something like that. You know, it's kind of it's like story actually. You know, they a lot of times in story they say, you know, start your character in a place of their, you know, old normal, like their or in a place of normalcy, um, and then find something to kind of knock them out of their state of normal, and then their the whole story ends up being they have to learn something to get back from out of chaos because now they've been knocked into a place of chaos. They have to, you know, learn some things to get out of chaos and into a new normal where there's victory from whatever it is that kind of threw them into chaos, and they have to learn something. So, you know, I think like you said, habits a great way to kind of find that. And what kind of habits have you have been helping you lately, you know, trying to move into something better, you know, with all this?
Well, it started with the smallest, silliest things like get up in the morning at the same time you did every day, regardless of whether you commute or not, shower and get dressed and out of your pajamas. Because at the beginning, it was such a shock that I was just like, no, when I have, I don't know, you know, you don't know exactly what to do. So, first of all, it's like hang on to whatever normality you can hang on to, and then start building new habits. But for me, is that idea that you have to have a baseline of something that is familiar to you. And I think that's what's missing in a lot of these comfort zone narratives, which is like, get out of your comfort zone, come on, do new things, blah blah blah. And it's like, yeah, but you have to have a baseline of normality,
Yeah.
you know, something that is familiar. Otherwise it's like just like a trip on drugs or something. You're just out of I don't know. For me, I need a certain. Maybe it's what you were talking about. Like maybe there are people that thrive under high levels of adrenaline and pressure, and they just have those thresholds in a different place. You know,
Yeah.
there's some people that need a lot of excitement in their lives. They have to jump out of planes and things like that. So I think there's an element of biology in it and personality. My thresholds, I think, are quite low. I like peace and quiet. I mean, I do comics. Obviously, I'm not a thrill seeker.
Yeah.
So for me, habits are super important to finding that moment where I'm not a rabbit in the headlights and unable to act.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, there is I don't know, I think there's definitely something to be said for being comfortable. And one thing I think that's interesting, a little bit different and it's related but a little bit different is like um you know, we talk about kind of, I guess, like this growth mindset a lot of times, and we have to keep growing and get better and never stop getting better and never stop learning. And, you know, I believe that. But at the same time, even as an artist, sometimes there is something pretty amazing that comes out of finding some set ways you do things, and kind of taking that to its greatest extent. And you, I think even with that, you're still growing and learning, but it might not be in the most obvious ways. Like, you know, you might have a certain way that you like to draw. You figured out kind of your style, and it's like, well, okay, this is how I draw. Like Sergio Aragona's, I don't think I've seen any difference in his art from day one, from when I've seen his stuff to now. Like he still kind of draws the same. He's got
Yeah.
the same humor, but I mean, maybe his thing where he's growing is, maybe he's telling better stories, or maybe he's, being more prolific, or who knows what it maybe there's just stuff in his personal life that he's doing better. You never know. So I believe
Yeah.
in growth. I believe in being uncomfortable, but I also believe in, I agree that kind of being in a comfort zone can be a blessing in and of itself as well. um,
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think a lot of the times you have to question who is producing the narrative and what are their reasons to do it, because sometimes there's a lot of self-interest in those type of narratives. So I don't know if you get these adverts, but on YouTube I get these adverts. What do people need to do? They need to learn, blah blah blah, and they're selling you a course. So of course they're gonna be telling you that you need to learn and you need to change. And another one is like, and I'm not dissing people that are coaches or teachers or whatever. I'm a teacher. Obviously, I believe in learning and I believe in growing. But a lot of the times when that narrative becomes like super forceful, like you need to change, and it's either a psychologist that is selling their service or a coach that is selling their service, and you have to ask yourself, is that what I need or is that what they need? And that's what I find with a lot of those out of your comfort zone things, that they're trying to sell you something. And maybe
abs-
you're fine where you are.
yeah, 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 totally. And I think, it's definitely helpful in kind of these times and stuff to think about, whether, like you were kind of saying, like, habits can lead to that. And I'm trying to think, because I feel like a lot of people have always wanted to, kind of work from home, especially artists, or to kind of strike out on their own. And we've heard a lot of stories about people, get becoming full-time illustrators, freelance illustrators, um, and they find out that, like you said, like they kind of have to start introducing some kind of structure, or else, who says what time it is to go to bed? Who says what time you need to wake up? Who says, you need to get to a certain deadline? Like, it's really, a lot of people have gone off the rails trying to figure that out, and usually procrastinating a lot. So I think, if you kind of don't have a plan, your day will plan you, and it won't be very productive.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. A lot of what habits is about taking control of like what your day is going to be like and where you're heading. And another thing that I like about what you say about Sergio Aragonés, he was like very he does do what he does really well. And the thing is, it, I find that m- as a teacher, I like to find what people are good at and then use that to get them forward in their learning. And I don't completely agree with the idea that you need to be good at everything. I think, and maybe this is something that is only applies to certain fields, but I feel like if you're really good at, let's say, figure drawing, you can learn anatomy through figure drawing, and you can learn a lot of things through figure drawing. So spend more time doing that. It's a good habit. It's something you do well. Exploit it. Use it. You are good at it. Don't let anyone tell you like, oh, you should study 3 point perspective. Yeah, study it, but don't leave what you're good at aside to do what other people are telling you to do, because that's your zone where you are good. Like, why would you stop doing what you're good at?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
another
it's
thing I find about the
interesting.
comfort zone.
Yeah, so like, it's pretty interesting too, because, like, you know how much does Sergio Aragones need to study, like, you know extreme foreshortening, or, like, you
Yeah.
know maybe complicated perspective views and things like that. Like, I don't know, he has a certain thing that he does, and if he were to introduce some of that stuff into his comics, it might look weird. It's not really part of his storytelling necessarily. um you know One thing, too, that I think of, is I've heard from that, especially from back in the day, I've heard Jersey Droz say this a lot. If anybody ever watches the Lean Into Art podcast, he's still um, very actively doing that podcast with Rob Stenzinger, both friends from back in the day. And you know, he a lot of times will talk about, sometimes he gets to a place where he feels like he's in, for lack of, he probably puts it a different way, but basically in a comfort zone. And sometimes he actually feels uncomfortable when he's gotten to that place because he feels like he's not challenging himself yet. And sometimes I've heard him say like, um, when it starts to feel kind of scary, and like maybe I'm not ready to do something like this, that's when he knows he's growing and learning. So I don't know, I do believe in comfort zone, but just to kind of take the devil's advocate type of thing, there is also the possibility of stagnation, which I think can also harm your work. So do you ever find yourself feeling like you need to challenge yourself more?
Well, I'm one of those eternal students type people. So my problem would be, and I am always questioning myself. So I think it's just like whatever you need. If you are a person that tends to be comfortable and tends to be complacent, of course you need to sometimes get that push out of your comfort zone.
Mm,
But I find that the majority of people that are in this community, or the majority of people I talk to, are actually too hard on themselves.
mm,
Uh, And that is more to their, like, it does more harm than good.
yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. That's I think that is a big problem, especially in art. It's just the nature of it because um, you there's never any point where there's like a point where you've kind of achieved it. You can
Yeah.
always do better, you can always learn something new. Even the most you know accomplished artist can still learn something new. I haven't quite created the Sistine Chapel yet. But so my goal one day is to make my comics on the ceiling of a church. So no, but it's like there's always room for growth, and if the end is never in sight, you will feel like you're never good enough to even make your first work sometimes. I've definitely
Exactly.
seen that kind of thing happen, and it can be frustrating because you see people and you want to see their work. I mean, even myself, I've done that. I've definitely done that in the past. I mean, why did it take me until I was in my mid 30s to make my first comic when I knew I wanted to do it in high school? That's not right. Like I should have made been I mean, I hear stories of um Eric Larson, one of my favorite comic book artists, Savage Dragon. He made like 100 issues of Savage Dragon way before he even became a professional. Like, and they were just, you know, stuff that he drew on regular paper and stapled together. And eventually, sadly, the stuff burned down in a fire.
Oh,
In
really?
a house fire, and that's craziness. But that being said, like that guy already put in his 10,000 hours before he even became a professional. Where I'm trying to become a professional as I hit those. Maybe I won't even ever hit those 10,000 hours. I don't know. So there's a difference between like you can keep learning, and I think you should always keep learning on some level. You should always be trying new things on some level, but at the same time, you know you need to also produce.
Yeah.
I think that's a
Yeah.
common theme I always talk about, but
Yeah, but you know what? I think in a sense we give the advice we want to receive ourselves. So like you struggle with producing, and that's why maybe you've struggled in the past with producing, and that's why maybe you drive that point home so much. Whereas for me, it's like I push myself so much so often, and I've burned myself out so often, that this whole get out of your comfort zone thing for me is like the worst piece of advice. So I'm trying to, maybe, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, of course, because obviously you have to learn and stuff, but I am saying that it's not about jumping into that zone and pushing yourself constantly. It's about slowly and patiently building a bridge with little habits so that you can get to that zone and it can be comfortable.
Yeah.
Because I used to do it like when I was, maybe, I think I was 15 or something. I wanted to run, and my brother is 6 years older than me, and he was preparing to be a cop. So I said, I want to go out and run with you. And he was like, okay. So obviously he's like 21, a guy, and I was 15-year-old girl, and I went out running with him twice. I destroyed myself, and I never run again. So what
Oh
was
no.
the point in pushing myself so much? It's like that's the kind of stupid thing I do. So
Yeah.
that's why I was making this point.
Yeah, absolutely. You can push yourself too hard. You can get into burnout and things like that, and sometimes you might be pushing yourself artificially, where you really don't need to be doing that so much. Um, yeah, you have to kind of know your zone, and when you find it, there is a beauty in just working within that, for sure. Let's see. We definitely have some people in the chat here. It's funny. DT6 says the kettle whistled for him at the same time as yours did. Freaked him
It's
out.
like great,
Or
great minds, great kettles,
could
think
be.
alike.
Do you have your own art on your coffee cup?
Yes, it was a gift from a friend a few years ago.
That's
she,
cool.
it was my birthday gift from a Secret Santa.
Awesome. So, if you want to stay in your comfort zone, make sure you have like an awesome mug and you got some coffee with you, because that'll help you.
Yeah,
The thing is, too, is like we obviously, most of the people who watch these are, they they make comics, and comics in and of itself, even if you're just doing the basic version of it, is enough of a challenge. Like,
yeah,
like you don't
yeah.
like. I see.
You don't need the extra grief. Yeah,
Yeah. And a lot of people will, a lot of people will disagree with me, because I'm a big fan of Rob Liefeld. I still am. I don't care. I don't care what people say. But he I was actually studying his work. I know it's horrible for an artist to say they're studying Rob Liefeld, but I was studying his work recently. And I look at, X Force, some of his earlier stuff, and I'm like, some of that stuff is actually really good. And people talk, some of the stuff that people talk about, they're like, oh, he avoids drawing feet, and there are so many feet in that, the first issue, or the set, all the issues of X Force. And there's
so
even
many feet.
very anatomical and I don't know, anatomical feet, because he has, there's one character, Feral, I think it's a woman. She's like a cat type of character, and she's got no shoes on, and the feet are awesome. They actually look really cool. So I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about, but I do know what they're talking about, because there's obvious examples of Rob Liefeld, not doing so well. And there's also what he's kind of, one of the ones he's known for really screwing up is, there's an image for Heroes Reborn that has, the Captain Marvel with, the triple D's and stuff, and um, it's
Oh
like,
yeah,
it's
I've seen that.
ridiculous looking. But if you actually look at that series, he's like at his best in that series. He's actually doing really well, and he's got great storytelling and energy. And I mean, the stories may not be super sophisticated, but well, actually, I think he didn't write those. I didn't read those ones, but I know the ones he's written, that usually they're not super sophisticated writing. Um, but that being said, I've also read some of his later stuff, his more recent stuff, and it kind of varies. It goes all over the place. But I feel like that's an example of somebody who I think he maybe, if he were to be honest about it, struggles with comfort zone, maybe. And this is just me thinking. I don't know him or anything. I don't know what he deals with or whatever, but I feel like as a younger artist he maybe was pushing himself more, and now some of the later stuff that he's done, like he did the Major X, I think, that character. And I look at that stuff and I'm like, this is not really good. And he should be, you would think he would be a better artist at this point, and he probably still is just as good an artist, but he's maybe not so focused. Maybe he's too comfortable, and
Mm,
it's,
yeah.
it's weird for me to talk about another artist like this. I don't usually go in depth about their faults publicly, without talking to them. But this is a different situation, I guess. But anyways, do you feel like sometimes you can be almost too comfortable to the point where your work suffers or lacks?
Well, I think this is for me. I don't know about you, but for me, I find that there is no such thing as multitasking for me. If I'm trying to do something that is difficult, I can do one thing that is difficult in each page. And
Mm,
if I don't have absolute mastery of another element of the page, then I'll probably I'll do really well on the thing I'm concentrating on, and then completely mess up on the other thing.
mm,
So I think an element of what you're saying maybe is deadlines. Like the guy just couldn't go back and rework the bits that he hadn't done really well.
mm,
That's just to cut him some slack. Because I'm pretty sure that at some point he studied the feet, like you said, like he has his anatomy right. But what happens to me, and maybe this is what happened to him as well, I don't know him, is that sometimes I think, yeah, I got this, I can do this. And then I relax and suddenly it's like, oh, my feet are potatoes again. Because, it happens.
yeah.
And you're concentrating on something. Maybe you're concentrating on story or light or color or whatever. And the other thing is slipping away from you. And you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize that was happening because I was focusing on this other thing. So if you're not like a super genius at technical stuff, I think I'm definitely not. I need to concentrate on that stuff quite a lot. I think it slips away and you don't even notice.
That's a great point. I was actually looking at Spawn last night. I'm always looking at all different artists, and obviously those are like right in my wheelhouse. I look at other artists and image guys. Everybody, don't think I don't.
Every now and then.
But I was looking at Spawn yesterday, and I noticed like the first few issues are really good. Like as far as just art, and it's McFarlane doing his McFarlane thing, like at his top level of what he does. And there was one panel. It was a single panel, and all it showed was a hand or whatever. And I was like, that is one of the worst drawn hands I've ever seen. And it was like literally a panel for that hand. So you would think that they would focus like on that he would focus on drawing a good hand if that's all there is in that panel. So I was like,
But nope.
weird. And he draws hands. I'm not saying he's the greatest hand drawer, but he definitely draws them better, in other places. So I was like, hey, even, but he made a lot of money on that comic, and and not that that's
Yeah.
the point, but he also produced it. He probably, I'm sure he didn't really love the look of that hand either, but at some point he had to say, you know what, this is not the most important thing
Yeah.
in the world. Let's move forward, you know?
Yeah, maybe he was drawing that hand and then maybe he got a call from the printers and he had to sort something out. I don't know. Like he was a businessman for the first time at that point. So I imagine he was having some issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So that being said, I do want to make sure that you're able to get to the things you need to get to. So I don't want to hold you back. But and I do have to get to work pretty soon, anyways. So let everybody know once again where they can find you, Teresa.
Well, they can find me here on YouTube, same name, and on Instagram, same name, but with underscores. Teresa del Pilar.
Awesome. And during this time, like if you find yourself in a different situation, and you're having a hard time, just do your best to create some new habits. I really like what Teresa was saying as far as you know treating the day like it's a almost a normal day. Getting up at a certain time, getting dressed, taking a shower, getting your coffee, and sitting down and doing some work. Like put a little structure in an unstructured life, and I think that can help help you find like a new normal. And my life is still chaos. I'm still working. It hasn't changed much besides just trying to be careful out there in the wild. But other than that, stay safe. Do the best you can, and keep being creative during this time. Even though there's stresses, it's still worthwhile to keep being creative. And I thank you guys for being coming and hanging out. Teresa, once again, thank you as always. Everybody in the chat, everybody watching after the fact, and we'll talk to you on the next one.
Thank you.
Yep,
Bye
anytime.
bye.